Okay, hello. It is Wednesday, May 24th, and this is our members forum. My name is Amy. I was just mentioning that my colleague Boyd Relack will be joining us shortly. I think I just saw him in the waiting room. I'm also going to be darting my eyes back and forth to make sure I'm getting everybody in the waiting room. We will do a brief few-minute presentation. As I was saying before I hit record, we do have some people that come to the members forums that are newer to the technology. And so sometimes we just like to do a NuCalm 101 or basic blocking and tackling. In the last few of these, we've done like an autonomic nervous system 101, because that's really what our patent is based on. So it looks like Boyd is here. I'm going to continue watching the waiting room and continue to let people in. So similar to what we've done in the past, for those of you that have joined us, if this is your first time joining us, we'll do a brief kind of 10-minute warm-up, if you will, and then we will have a live question and answer that Boyd and I will field. And I also have some pre-submitted questions, so we will cover those as well. We do have a lot of people that watch this recording later. The last piece of advice I would like to share is to please remain on mute, since we do have a lot of people that listen to the recording post-meeting. It just helps to minimize distractions and make it a more pleasant experience. So with that, Boyd, let me introduce you.
How's everybody today?
Awesome.
So we'll start with a little overview. I'm going to share my screen in a second. I'm going to go through a couple just graphics to make sure we kind of align everybody together as we jump into more specific questions. Like Amy said, we try and do a kind of a quick overview to make sure we're all kind of centered around the same piece and how the technology works. So to start with, if you know this stuff, this is great, because then it's just kind of a reiteration of what you know, and we'll talk about sleep a little bit. So let me share my screen. All right, we're going to start not there, but here. Okay. So our brains have different frequencies, and we'll start out with kind of where we start our day. When we wake up a couple hours before our cognizant state, our body starts firing cortisol, because most of us are aware at night we go through different sleep cycles. So when we're trying to get back, and the experts will tell us to always, in the best case scenario, go to sleep and wake up at the same time, because you're truly perfecting a 24-hour clock to your circadian rhythm. So when we wake up in beta, and beta starts at 12 hertz. So we're generally cognizant throughout the day at 12 to 15 hertz. Our sleep goes through three different cycles. The first cycle is alpha, and alpha goes from 12 to 8 hertz. Theta goes from 8 to 12 hertz. And delta, which is where we find deep dreamless sleep, goes from 4 hertz down to 0.5. So analogy I use is, think of an elevator. You're starting your day on the 12th floor. You're waking up, you're not totally conscious, but you may be starting lower in one of those three realms of delta, theta, or alpha. But your cortisol, like rocket boosters on the space shuttle, are lifting you out, no matter where you are in your sleep cycle, up to 12 hertz to the 12th floor, and we're depositing you at 12. First thing you do is you go over to the coffee pot and you get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. You may pop your brain up 1 hertz, like the 13 hertz, etc. But generally, we're working in that 12 to 15 range throughout the day. Now, that doesn't always give us clarity, and we can talk about that in a bit, etc. But when we go back at the end of the day and go to sleep, what happens is our body throughout the day starts depositing. As soon as we wake up, it creates adenosine. And adenosine is like the body's note to tell us when to sleep. When we build enough, think of an hourglass, when we fill up our brain with adenosine, and it's created by sleep pressure, it produces throughout the day and throughout the night. In daytime's there, and our body tells us, because we're taking in the visual light, and the visual cortex is telling us, well, that's when we're supposed to be awake. So we keep producing adenosine, but we're cognizant, we're working, doing whatever. And then at night, as long as we don't disrupt ourselves with too much blue light, our body starts producing melatonin, which helps us go to sleep at night. Right. And some people may take melatonin as a supplement. You know, the experts will tell you 0.5 to 1.5 milligrams is fine. You take too much. And some people, we need it more, and our body produces less melatonin as we age. You may need to take a little bit more, but you don't want to do too much. So then we go to sleep. And when we fall asleep, we drop through alpha from 12 to 8 hertz in a matter of moments. That's when you feel yourself getting drowsy and kind of falling asleep, and you roll over and you're out. You drop from alpha down to a non-REM cycle down through delta. And then throughout the night, you're going to circulate between light sleep, which is alpha, 8 to 12 hertz, theta, which is REM sleep, and I'll come back to that, at 4 to 8 hertz, and then delta at 0.5 to 4 hertz, dreamless. So what happens to our bodies in different stages? Light sleep is relaxing, etc., but it's not as therapeutic. And the purpose of sleep is recovery. So in delta, when we have deep dreamless sleep, our body, for instance, our tissues regenerate. But most of our healing, our recovery, comes in theta. And that's exactly where NuCalm was originally developed 33 plus years ago. It's developed to drop you to 4 hertz and sustain you. And unlike other binaural software companies, we have a nonlinear oscillation pattern that Dr. Holloway developed. So we've never had anybody come back to us and say, hey, it doesn't work anymore. It worked for 6 years and it doesn't work, because the entrainment process and the complexity of what Dr. Holloway built, no brain has been able to figure out. There are a zillion different softwares at some point that have claimed monaural or binaural beats, but many of them over time, we've had people tell us, I've tried a lot of things and after a while it doesn't work. Why? Because our developed brain, our prefrontal cortex, has figured out the patterns, and therefore the software doesn't work anymore. So this isn't like a $3 app, and that's why we don't charge $3 for it. So what is the benefit of theta, where we get REM sleep? REM sleep is where our body really does most of the recovery. For instance, our red blood cells replenish. And when we do shows, and you may have experienced this, you may hear or feel yourself dropping. Has anybody ever felt that? Or you may feel heavy. We've had people, it's happened to me, and most of us don't know this, but when we're in theta, our body actually disables our muscles so we don't act out our lucid dreams, which occur in theta. So you may wake up cognizantly with your brain, but your muscles don't react, so you can't move. If you ever woke up and thought somebody's in your house and you're trying to move and you can't, it's because your brain has disabled your muscles to prevent you from acting out your lucid dreams. It'll catch up quick. But let's talk for a second about the autonomic nervous system and why these frequencies have something to do with recovery. So the autonomic nervous system is comprised of 2 subsets, the sympathetic, which is the excitatory side, and the parasympathetic, which is the inhibitory side. The purpose of NuCalm is it creates parasympathetic dominance. What does that mean? The excitatory side is where you get stress, cortisol, adrenaline, your fight or flight. And once the brain is triggered fight or flight because of the circumstance around you, all human reaction to stress is the same thing. It removes all our consciousness out of our forward brain, and we're in this fight or flight mechanism. What doesn't happen, you can't say, oh, I'm okay now, and downregulate yourself. The body doesn't react that way. So you can't just simply turn off your stress response. What NuCalm does is it creates parasympathetic dominance, balances the 2 sides, and creates homeostasis. And homeostasis is the fancy word for saying you're going to go to sleep. So the purpose of PowerNap and Rescue, and I know one of the questions was, why do we tell everybody to start in Rescue? The biggest issue of our life that causes us to lose sleep is the inability for us to balance stress and anxiety and treat it, right? We're not really good at it. Our 40 million year old brain has a head start on our ability, because when you trigger stress, you can't fight it. So we're not good at coping with stress and anxiety. And sometimes you get anxiety from your personal situation, you could have genetic anxiety, etc. But what we do know is when stress is left untreated, it goes from acute to chronic. And if you don't treat that, you're going to degrade your sleep. Why? Because if you're not treating your stress and anxiety and dealing with it during the day, you happen to take that into your bedroom when you lie down, your brain doesn't shut down as easily because you're still stressed or you still have anxiety. And what happens then is you're degrading your sleep patterns. You're not getting, and here's what the CDC says, as an adult male, and females need more, ideally we need 7 hours of sleep and 4 to 6 sleep cycles. So some of us will measure with devices and Oura rings, et cetera, our sleep. Mine happens to tell me the percentage of light sleep, the percentage of deep sleep, the percentage of REM compared to previous 28-day average. And then it also tells me how many minutes of interrupted sleep I've had, et cetera. So where am I going? If we don't get good sleep, we accelerate our death. It's science. Why? The autonomic nervous system governs these pieces of our body, our circulation, our digestion, our respiration, and our endocrine system. So when you read about different disease states, anywhere from high blood pressure causes strokes, et cetera, heart attacks, to ulcerative colitis, it's because we're not getting enough sleep. And if we don't get 5 hours of sleep, our body will drop the immunology reproduction that we need every night by upwards of 70%, including things like killer cells that fight cancer. So sleep is the magic solution to longevity. And if you can't treat stress and anxiety, you don't get good quality sleep, especially as we get more complicated lives and we age, or we have different situations happen in our life. And therefore, what are we doing? We're accelerating our demise. Sounds pretty fun today on a Wednesday afternoon to talk about accelerated death, doesn't it? So let me shut this one down. And all I'm trying to show you here is these are the frequencies of delta. Theta is 4 to 8. And this is what you get. You get accelerated recovery, resiliency. You get better clarity when we regulate our brain going up. So focus will oscillate at 15 to 20 hertz. And if you want to really feel the impact of this science, Ignite will literally change your energy and will give you mistake-free focus, because we go up above beta to 39 and 40 hertz for the first 8 to 10 minutes. And in the last couple of minutes, we just power out at 41 hertz. All of these have a residual effect. In NuCalm, in PowerNap, Rescue, and FlowState, we bring you back to 12 hertz once we bring you down, but that doesn't mean your autonomic follows your brain frequency that quick. So you have a lasting effect. You can counter that if you change one of the frequencies. Like if you just did NuCalm and you have this nice relaxation, your autonomic's very relaxed and balanced, and you're still recovering, and you put on Ignite and jack yourself up, you will change your autonomic nervous system. So I'll stop there because I'm going to come back later and we'll talk about some protocols that we can share with you. But that's one. And then the last thing I wanted to show you real quick, let me just close this one, is right here. And I think everybody's aware of these, but we offer different subscriptions, so not everybody's perfectly aligned with all these. So I'm going to cover this real quick. And I know I sound like I'm powering through something. And yes, I did a lot of NuCalm today. PowerNap, 4 hertz. 20 minutes is equivalent to 2 hours of restorative sleep. If you can do nothing else and you got that little bit of lag, it usually happens right now, like 12 to 5 o'clock. I can tell you, I can do 10 minutes of power nap and still feel good because I'm getting about an hour out of that 10 minutes. So basically, when you turn on the core of NuCalm, PowerNap, FlowState, and Rescue, we're sending different tones, frequencies, vibrations into each ear. You're hearing music, but think of an ice cream sundae. Our brains are almost triggered like, oh, I'm going to relax. I need to listen to music. The music is the cherry on top. When you get to, all the good stuff down below, that's the tones of vibrations. Your ear can't hear it, but your middle brain, that is the 40-million-year-old developed brain that has all the stress built in and everything else, that is like your ears are a direct channel into the middle brain, and the tones of vibrations will trick the brain. It's called entrainment, and we will do that over a matter of minutes, and we frequency hop between alpha, delta, and theta. And once we develop a pattern, the brain follows it because it's nonlinear and oscillating. Guess what happens? Now we have your brain, and we take you to where you want. So at PowerNap and Rescue, different timings, it takes you to 4 hertz, and it sustains you at 4 hertz, which is the very bottom of theta. And then the last couple minutes, we bring you back to 12 hertz. Flow state is not as restorative, but it's used for creativity, relaxation, being calm. It's kind of meditative. It's 7.83 hertz, and you can barely see it, but it's right there. And that's called the Schumann resonance. Schumann was a German composer. That is the exact frequency the Earth vibrates at. So that's will kind of ground you to the world, but it's not going to give you the restoration and accelerated recovery that Rescue will. At night, deep sleep, it's like you jumped into that elevator at 12 hertz and it just went boom. Deep sleep is 50 minutes, no matter whether you start with the 8-hour or the 50 minutes. The 8-hour starts with the same 50-minute track on the left side. It takes you down to 0.5 hertz. And I don't know if any of y'all have tried this on younger children. I've tried it on my dogs. It knocks everybody out. If you need concentration during the day, focus will go to 15 to 20. You can turn it on through a Bluetooth speaker. You can loop it. You can play it all day or night. It's not going to hurt you. You don't want to play it going to sleep. Instead, you do deep sleep. And then finally, for exercise, energy, clarity, if you want to start your morning out and erase all the fog in your head, turn on Ignite and listen to Tony Robbins yelling at you for a while and see what happens in about 15 minutes. I'll stop there, Amy, and we can jump into some questions.
That sounds good. I'm still giggling from your last comment. So this is the time to either post a question in the chat, or you're welcome to come off mute and ask. And if there's a little bit more of a lull, I do have some pre-submitted ones that I will fill in our conversation with. So,
Amy, can I ask a deep sleep question while you're getting all your others?
of course.
So I know there's a 50-minute and an 8-hour, and different people, I think, use it for slightly different amounts of time. I'm one of those people that I love to fall asleep with it, but I generally fall asleep within about 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes while I'm, reading and just, drifting off. But I can't fall asleep if it's playing. So I find myself turning it off after about 20 to 30 minutes. Because if I leave it on to the 50, I'll wake up at the end of 50 because it's quiet. So my question is knowing that there's a pattern and there's a deliverability to the 50 minutes in terms of what it does with the different brain waves, what's happening if I turn it off at 20 minutes or 30 minutes? Anything, or do I care?
No, you don't need to care, because we started at initially the 50 minutes because that was to get you to deep sleep, which happens earlier in the evening. What we don't want to do is try to keep you in delta for more than 50 minutes, because your natural sleep architecture, it cycles between deep sleep, light sleep, and REM. So that's perfectly fine if that works for you. And
I just wasn't sure if you were going from 1 hertz to another, but it was all deep, and I was sort of like getting 2/3 of the way or 1/3 of the way through the process of getting to 4. What you're saying is that I'm in 4 by virtue of the fact that I feel like I've got a lead weight coming over me. Congratulations, pop it off and go to sleep.
Yeah. And then if you find, because I forget, do you use a wearable and monitor your sleep cycles?
I used to, but I found myself getting too wrapped up in, oh my God, I'm not getting enough deep sleep or blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't, I read enough on it. I became convinced that it wasn't accurate enough and it was messing with my head. So I took it off.
That's amazing. Absolutely. You're, sometimes what is better is almost like how you feel qualitatively, but what you want to do is you want to promote deep sleep. Just like we bring you down, it's Boyd's elevator. We're all getting in that elevator and we're just going down, and then you will just naturally kind of cycle into those other sleep stages throughout the evening. So it's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll wait another moment, and then I'm going to check my document. We're going to talk a little bit. Let me just jump into FlowState. So there's been a lot of questions about FlowState. One, when it was renamed from Reboot. Another, because we don't take you down as low, right? So Rescue and PowerNap, they get you to theta, which is that restorative state. Alpha is a little bit above theta, and while it is restorative, going back to what Boyd was saying, it helps to unleash your creativity, inspire. We have a lot of our artists and writers use it. So when they come out of a flow state immersive experience, so that's with your eye mask and your headphones and your recline, they're feeling a little bit more like they've released some of their mental blockages. Some people just prefer to use Rescue because they want that restorative, those restorative benefits. I like to refer to it when I go into my cement block and I'm just kind of knocked out. So, and then additionally, when we launched our new flow state journey, we incorporated the 7 chakras, which within that 30-minute journey session. So, the chakras are they're an overlay to flow state. All of the flow state channels, though, the flow state channel, all the 3 journeys in the flow state channel take you, they have that same platform, that same base that are going to get you to alpha. There is some restorative quality, but when you come out, it's a little bit of a different experience, like we just talked about. You can use it. It's more of how you want to behave and how you want to feel, and some of the occasions that you want to mentally and physically prep yourself for after. Some people have also asked, can you use it with just a speaker in the background, similar to Focus? So, some people have experimented with that. And actually, before we launched Focus, people were using it in that use case. But remember, it goes to alpha and not necessarily beta. So it could serve a different purpose for you. And that's really just going to be something that is personal for you. Personally, if I want to focus, I use Focus. So it's just something that you would have to play around with. Still recommend, though, for that deeply restorative and recovery session, to always select Rescue and PowerNap if you don't have that much time to get into theta. So it's a little bit of a different use case. So once again, just kind of going back to that toolkit and just figuring out what's going to work for you on that particular day for that particular time.
So Amy, too, there is another question around, can Focus or flow state journeys be played in the background as you work, write, paint, etc.? And do I need to wear a disc if it can be used this way? So, so the disc is like having a glass of wine without the side effects. Some people, the primary reason for you to continue to wear the disc throughout the day would be if you want to help relieve some anxiety that you may carry throughout the day. It has a calming and dissipating effect. However, in an immersive experience, if you're using a disc and an eye mask and your headphones in a flow state rescue or power nap session, that's one thing. If you're going to use Focus ambiently, we would not recommend using a disc unless we're going back to that use case where you've got some, you want that calming and dissipating effect. For example, some people, I never want that calming, dissipating effect. I personally have a lot going on, and so I want to have all the energy I can muster throughout the day. So as soon as I'm done with the rescue session or power nap, I take it off immediately.
Can I do a follow up on the disc since you just brought that up?
Sure.
Do you mind, Amy? So I'm just I still don't quite understand why it worked without the disc, because I thought that it was important to get to your pericardium 6. And that's sending a message into the pericardium sac, which then goes to your brain. And the brain causes you to do your neuroinhibitors and blockers so you don't produce fight or flight. Anyway, I'm probably butchering what happens. But if you don't have the disc, how does all that happen?
So let me jump in for a second, Amy. So the brain generally wants to resist any attempt to change the brain, the frequencies. So because the brain is so developed and can figure out patterns over time, and that's what happened to, like I mentioned, to some of these other binaural softwares, it's naturally going to resist. And then the other thing is you have to think about the chemical cycle of your body, because like when your cortisol is fired in the morning, your cortisol levels are higher. Some people have an imbalance of cortisol and they don't have like PTSD, but they feel like they do because they have just cortisol off the charts. So the disc kind of helps prevent or helps the brain like adapt to the entrainment process. And everything you said is true. You're basically left side because it's closer to the heart. Each arm's pericardium meridian. The heart sits inside the pericardium sac. The disc supplements, and if somebody has a condition where they need more, like if they have a deep anxiety issue or chronic stress to high acute stress, it really depends on the individual person. And you can try it. And we always encourage people to experiment different durations, different times a day. You'll be better off if you use a disc in the morning because you're going to adapt to it faster, et cetera, and your brain won't resist it as much. But the music in itself is powerful, or the underlying physics and algorithms, because of the nonlinear oscillations. The disc is kind of doing the same thing. Remember, the disc is, there's sets of frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies that Dr. Holloway figured out. For the hypothalamus, the vagus nerve is the largest in the parasympathetic nervous system. And when it triggers the release of GABA, which is what it does, GABA A, GABA B, L-theanine, which absorbs GABA, and L-tyrosine, which helps develop other neurotransmitters. GABA itself is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So it's a chemical messenger that is basically telling your neurons, your cells, to shut the flow of cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah. So how does it work if you don't have the disc? That you just hit exactly on my question.
Just put on the eye mask, put on the software, and lay down.
So what you're telling me is that the auditory, the signals going through there are just as effective as or equally as effective or
more
as going through the pericardium.
Yeah. So the reason the disc is keen based on how much you're resisting is because if you're firing cortisol and adrenaline and you need that inhibition to be cut off, right, that flow, because that's what's going to help you. When you're firing cortisol and adrenaline, your body's active and you can't downregulate. When you hear people say, I can't shut down, I go to sleep at night and my brain doesn't stop. That's generally what happens. Is you're describing an oversympathetic reaction, your ANS, the sympathetic side, just firing. Right. So people who have like PTSD or TBI, that's stuck in high beta and they have a difficult time down regulating that side of the autonomic, where NuCalm on the software is bringing up the parasympathetic. So what we're trying to do is bring down the sympathetic with the disc, cut that flow of cortisol and adrenaline. I call it pumping the brakes on your car, right? Because you're shutting off the stuff that causes the sympathetic to keep active. So you're bringing that down and then you're creating parasympathetic dominance. What we're trying to do is match the two sides. So it does work. I can tell you, I started it in 2014. I never used a disc till like 2020. Never used the GABA, etc. I never even wore an eye mask half the time. If you're tired enough and your body needs it and the music entrains your brain, you're going to drop to 4 hertz.
And it'll still stop the production of the cortisol?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's creating the parasympathetic dominance. It's not touching the sympathetic. It's just trying, basically think of the sympathetics like up at the 18th floor, different analogy with frequencies, but you're bringing the parasympathetic up.
Okay.
It depends really the individual's human condition. People who have ADD, we treat, it works for autism, different conditions. A lot of people will be highly sensitized. People who have mold toxic exposure, et cetera. You may need more because your body is just drained or overly sensitive to certain things. I talked to somebody the other day and I shared this with our team. I've never heard this. We have a user who literally is so sensitive, she cuts the discs in quarters. And I thought that's amazing because I'm thinking, okay, wait a second, it's a Tesla coil over a Lahosky multi-wave oscillator. And it's basically triggering the release of GABA that's then basically telling your body to shut that cortisol and adrenaline flow. But it works because her system is different than ours is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help, Diana?
It helps. I may have to come back at you again because I spent so much time in the early days understanding the disc and the production of GABA and understanding, neuroblockers and neurotransmitters. And now I feel like I'm on a slightly different page and I just need to understand better why it's working.
Well, there's other things too. Our body does secrete GABA. There are some, I'm just looking real quick to find them. There are certain things that we eat that can create GABA, et cetera, in the body.
Right.
Like, green tea, black tea, oolong tea,
Yeah.
brown rice, soy, azuki beans, chestnuts, mushrooms, tomatoes, spinach, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Oh, good. Sprouted grains and sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
So all of those also fire GABA. So if you have a good diet, you may not need it. But here's the key. Try it. If you have a difficulty for some reason in a consistent basis, then continue to use the disc.
But for those
Thank
of you that have been using NuCalm regularly, like you're a mastermind, Sheridan is a mastermind with some other issues. We talk about how NuCalm has a residual effect, right? And it has a cumulative effect. And, I was doing Rescue 70 religiously last year, and now it's more like Rescue 40, right? Because things just change and you kind of optimize. So even if you definitely would not have gotten the same experience with or without the disc a year ago, it may be different now because you are using NuCalm and particularly Rescue and PowerNap regularly. So it does change over time. You need less over time.
I'm going to go back real quick to that focus flow state while you're doing something creative. I wouldn't encourage doing the focus, yes, the flow state. I wouldn't touch Rescue. I did talk to somebody a while ago who played Rescue just looping in the background, and that person needed to bring himself down for concentration. Focus will take you up to give you the concentration. We've talked to folks too that flow state, because it's right at that alpha theta level, right? It dips into 7.83 hertz. So flow state, you can get creativity. We had somebody in our team who was in school and ended up using flow state and wrote 5 pages of paper like that when she was struggling to get like in the groove of writing a college level paper. So again, we encourage people to experiment because things work differently for all of us. Our brains are all built the same way. Life kind of brings different factors into our personal situations that cause us to be different, and how the software can work differently with people is also based on what's going on in our lives, stress, anxiety, etc. There's another great question I want to jump into, because I used to be in the military, and when you learn to teach, you always say, what's the caution statement? There's a question that says, at what time of day can you not use Rescue, Focus, and PowerNap? Okay, great question. Rescue and PowerNap shouldn't be, I always simplify it and say dawn to dusk. At 4 hertz theta, it's restoration. You don't want even 20 minutes of PowerNap, again, is equal to 2 hours restorative sleep. You don't want that too close to your natural sleep time, because what will happen is you'll give yourself little micro adjustments to your circadian rhythm. You generally want to go to sleep at the same time. So I say after dawn. It depends on what time you go to sleep. We also say within 3 hours, don't do it, because 20 minutes or 30 minutes is giving you 2 to 3 hours of sleep. If you're trying to sleep 2 to 3 hours later, you may not readily go to sleep. So avoid, if you go to sleep at like 9 o'clock, you probably should avoid PowerNap and Rescue after 5, 6 for sure. Okay. Focus, there's no real bad time to do it, because we're just oscillating slightly above where we're already cognizant. You don't want to maybe do it right before you go to bed, because we're up a little bit. But if you have enough adenosine produced, what happens at night when you fall asleep, think of an hourglass. As soon as you start to sleep, it's erasing the adenosine out of your body. So focus, you can play Bluetooth speaker throughout the day, in the evening. Just when you get close to the time you go to sleep, you don't want to do too much to adjust your autonomic or circadian rhythm. On the other side, they didn't ask this, but I'm going to say it, deep sleep. You don't want to do deep sleep too close to your natural wake up. Couple hours, hour and a half for sure. Why? If our body's firing cortisol 2 to 2.5 hours before we wake up, remember the rocket boosters, and we don't know where we are close to what sleep cycle we're in, close to the time we naturally wake up. But deep sleep is going to keep you at 0.5 hertz. So if you're at 0.5 hertz, you get in that elevator and cortisol's firing you up, you may be a little lightheaded, in a sense, a little groggy. So instead, and this is what Amy does fairly well. I do it inconsistently, but I do it frequently enough. If you wake up a little bit before or after your natural wake up time period and you have some time, do some rescue or do a power nap. Do 30 or 40 minutes. You're topping off your sleep. And that'll refresh you. And that'll give you a little more energy going into your morning.
Yeah. I do every morning. I do that. So we had some comments about how people have shortened their baseline a little bit. So instead of, rescue 70, it's their natural routine is now a shorter journey, which is outstanding. That's exactly what we're talking about. I do want to go back to a question that was put in the chat of how does deep sleep affect someone who sleeps well 7 to 8 hours every night? That's a great question. Boyd, you're nodding. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I read that too. I'm like, that's a really good question. So one of the things my polar watch tells me is my percentages. So we'll do a common baseline. We know in delta, deep sleep, our tissues regenerate, okay? Cellular regeneration. In REM, theta, rescue power nap, your red blood cells, other reparative. We tell the analogy, Patrick Kane and the Blackhawks in 15 broke his collarbone. They did surgery and they said 12 weeks to recover. It was an article, you can Google it. The trainer talked to Jim. He did rescue twice a day. And in 7 weeks, he was back on the ice. He accelerated his recovery almost by 50% and reduced it. What happens when you're accelerating recovery because you're in REM and you're getting more REM or you're getting more deep sleep? You're basically preparing your body better. So what's the goal if you're sleeping 7 or 8 hours? Change your percentage because you still have a percentage of light sleep that's not as productive. So you want to spend more time in delta and REM than you do in light and alpha, because that's when your body's repairing better. And when you get all that reparation to your body, all those disease states that may come along over time, you're pushing away because you're getting better quality of sleep, because the more REM and the more delta, the more theta and delta and deep sleep and REM, the more your body's recovering. So it's really a longevity issue.
And if you have more dreams, is that indicative of any particular wavelength in your opinion?
Yes, it definitely is. You're getting a lot of REM, a lot of theta.
And that's improved sleep quality, actually. Yeah, people talk about, and we've written a lot about this. It's like you dream when you're a child. You don't have a lot of chronic sleep issues, or most people don't when they're a child because they don't have as much stress, like in terms of the norm, right? And so having vivid, lucid dreams, if you set your alarm, being woken up in the middle of a dream, right? That used to happen in high school, and now it happens again. That's another part of that improved sleep quality. That's something tangible that you can acknowledge and measure.
And generally, as we get older, again, we said you got to have, your body produces less melatonin, your sleep could degrade, etc. Often what happens is you dream less because you're getting less REM. You're getting more light sleep, which is not as good for you, instead of when you're younger, getting more REM, etc. Because your body's healthier when you're younger, etc. And as we age and our body starts to degrade and not recover as well, that's literally the anti-aging piece that NuCalm can really kind of help you with, is the more REM, which is power nap and rescue in the theta range, and the more deep sleep in delta frequencies, the more your body's repairing. So you're pushing off disease state to later, which means you're basically increasing your longevity. I'll share something funny with you all. Has anybody here, and you can come off mute and share this, has anybody here ever dreamt that you could fly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Look that up, because I did one time. I used to dream I could fly and I loved it. It's like, just like a kid, I could just run and all of a sudden I'm up in the sky. And just like when you're going to Disney and seeing Soarin', when you're above all the mountains and stuff, that means you're more free spirited and you're less stressed. So when that disappears out of your dreamscape, that means you have more stress, more anxiety. So unfortunately, I haven't dreamt that I could fly in several years. So I'm still trying though.
I did not know that. So that's interesting. I'm just going to take that one in. So I want to go back to Doug. You just sent a question about how do you know which tracks incorporate the chakras. So the new FlowState track, obviously it has its own channel. It's orange. That one does. And I'm gonna just hold up my phone really quick because there is a place on the very bottom under restart and end, trying to do this, where you can see what the track name is. And this happens to be ST3003, the 7 chakras. And this is the Rescue 30. So you just want to make sure that you can see the title of the software journey, and then that'll tell you. And if you need the specific tracks for Rescue and PowerNap, I'm happy to let you know. PowerNap 7 chakras is in that one as well. So if you just can find where the title is, then you'll be all set. I'm going to ask, here's a question. So, okay. So Joyce, so you've got a lot going on, and you mentioned that you're finding even when you top off your sleep, if you're getting 5 to 6 hours, which, probably is not enough, that your mind chatter does not cease. If you're doing it in the morning, then yes, it is that cortisol, right? Because your body kind of naturally wants you to wake up. It's, starting to hear the birds chirp, and the sunlight might be starting to come through your bedroom windows. You are still getting the restorative benefits. You may not be having that, that like very deep experience. You are getting the restorative benefits. And, one of the things that we talk about is just, there are times when life is more challenging than others. And that is going to manifest a little bit differently in your NuCalm session. If you are recovering from surgery, if you are experiencing an illness, if you're going through a really stressful time, you have jet lag from traveling over 6 different time zones. So there are going to be more challenging times, and that will change your NuCalm specific session experience. However, you are still getting the restorative benefits. So just keep at it, and hopefully you'll start seeing and feeling those similar benefits that you did before in terms of in the moment, but you are getting those restorative benefits.
I'll jump back to something that Sheridan mentioned, going from from longer duration, 120 down to 70 and 50 minutes, et cetera. So, our white paper does say, our medical advisors have said, continued use of NuCalm, you can truly build stress resiliency. So you can buffer, right? You're going to be more in control when something does happen. You're not reacting as if you had maybe a couple of years ago before you started really using NuCalm. So there is a benefit to continued consistent use. Besides longevity, that ability to, buffer your stress and et cetera is actually going to give you back better sleep. It's going to give you better. We're always striving for that question about deep sleep. You want more delta and more REM because that's more restorative, more reproducing of what our body needs to fight the next day and survive longer term. Yeah. And Amy mentioned it too, and for others, if you're having these time periods in life where you're just like, you're having that overstimulating side of your ANS, your sympathetics firing, wear a disc. Just wear a disc during the daytime to cut that flow of cortisol and adrenaline. It's just going to basically slow you down, right? And give you a little bit more comfort throughout the day. And somebody had asked, if you did Rescue twice a day, can I reuse the disc? If your body resists the entrainment, use a disc. If you think you can, we never tell anybody during NuCalm, because you're trying to repair and get accelerated recovery, never reuse a disc, okay? Now, I do tell people I've done this a couple of times. I haven't done it lately, but if you do a 40-minute session, use a disc or 50, whatever, those discs last 2 to 4 hours. If you can know which one it was, you can use it at night going into deep sleep, because any cortisol and adrenaline, any effect that's left in it is going to do the same thing. It's going to it's going to give the neurotransmitter, the inhibitory neurotransmitter, GABA, messaging within your neurons to shut that flow of cortisol and adrenaline. So for instance, if you do rescue, but you still have a little difficulty going to sleep and you're not easily dropping through alpha in literally minutes, then either you can try and reuse that disc if there's anything left. Generally what I do, if I have a disc on and I do NuCalm at all, I just leave it on because I want to continue the benefits of having adjusted my autonomic nervous system, and there's no reason to take it off to me at that point.
So here is a question. We're talking a lot about sleep. Can I reduce my sleep requirement from 8 to 6 hours by substituting with a 30-minute rescue session? Will it be as restorative as a full 8 hours of sleep? So sleep is still sleep, right? And this is not a substitute for sleep. What it is, it's restorative, and you will get the benefits of, for example, a power nap with 20 minutes is really the equivalent of 2 hours of deep restorative sleep, but sleep is still the gold standard in terms of, you know, your rest and recovery. And we don't recommend using this as a sleep replacement.
Remember, CDC says ideally males 7 hours, females more. When ladies go through premenopause, menopause, it disrupts sleep. When you have cancer treatments, anything that's really extreme, you're disrupting sleep. That's the time you need more sleep. So I wouldn't shortchange sleep, if anything, because it's not just duration, it's quality, because you got to do those cycles. You need those 4 to 6 cycles. If you spend too much time in light sleep, you're not getting as much restorative sleep. And somebody asked about devices I was going to show. My specific product I use is a Polar, and I've used it for years, but it gives me information on my sleep. And it says basically, and it also, if I get less than 4 hours of sleep, like I had to go get my daughter this morning at JFK, it's kind of like Gilligan's Island. It's like a 3-hour tour to get there and back. So I didn't get 4 hours, but when I came back, I went down and I did rescue. So, you know, I got 5 hours, 38 minutes of sleep at night. That said 448 from today, but again, 85% was restful. So my device literally does say how many minutes of interruption and then what percent compared to a 28-day average of alpha, theta, and delta being light, REM, and deep sleep I get. And
Do you wear a watch with that app?
Yeah, it's the watch. It's got an OCR on the back.
Okay.
And it just syncs Bluetooth to, and it tracks all my workouts. So when I swim or do yoga, et cetera, I'm measuring all that. It's got like 30 different activities you can record, you know, your duration, et cetera. It tracks all your heart rate, et cetera, and records that back. I just do it to mentally say that I'm pushing myself. So let's go back to the other questions, Amy. Let's see what else, because there were some good ones in here.
I'm also responding to Carol, the best time of day to use rescue. So, you know, we talked a little bit about this. Rescue is great between noon and 5, and that's when a lot of us have that natural dip in energy, right? The afternoon slump, you're reaching for sugar or, you know, potentially want a nap or caffeine to try to kind of get through. And then eventually it could theoretically, you know, wear off if you start moving around enough at night for dinner or the evening. But that doesn't work for everyone, right? I you know, like I personally, I wake up earlier. Boyd talked about it a little bit. I set my alarm earlier and I do a rescue 40 every morning, regardless if it's a weekday or weekend or whatever, because that is what helps me have energy throughout the day, because my afternoons are just really unpredictable with my family and just, you know, a million things going on, like all of us. So if you can do it in the afternoon, that's outstanding. But if that's not the time that it fits into your schedule, definitely recommend doing it first thing in the morning. Or if you happen to wake up in the middle of the night and have a hard time going back to sleep and you're within, you know, 2 to 3 to 4 hours within your desired wake up time, that's another good time to try to use it, you know, because you want to go back to sleep if it's the middle of the night, and that could kind of help you get back there. So great question.
Yeah, let's go back to, so there's a question early on that's in the pre-submitted. I downloaded some journeys on the plane, but they couldn't be played. The message said something needed to download them again soon. I tried to download them again. The message said I've already downloaded them. I was in airplane mode, but that shouldn't matter. It does, because if you're in airplane mode, it won't download. What do I need to do? So let me explain what happens. Since we are a business, and we don't give things away like this, so we use something called digital rights management software. So when you subscribe month to month, right, and if you happen to cancel, it's going to delete your downloads, right? So you won't be able to download them and keep using it for years and years and months, because you're leasing, you're basically renting a monthly license. If it's annual or mastermind, you only have to download once a year, right? Because we set our software to allow you to download them and hold them for the year that you've paid. And even mastermind, you have to redo them every year. But if you're monthly and the message is telling you you need to download them soon, and you go to download, but they're already downloaded, you're not going to download them twice. So you have to almost wait for them to the digital rights management software to catch up and delete the downloads. And understand, when you're downloading, you're not downloading into your phone, you're downloading to our app in your phone. And if you stay in airplane mode, you're not on Wi-Fi, so you can't download them. I'm not sure if this person was in airplane mode when they tried to download them again. But basically, here's the thing to do. If you're traveling and you want to use it on a plane, just make sure you got them downloaded that morning, and then you should be fine.
And the way to know that they are downloaded successfully, I'm going to just pull up my.
Yeah, I can do it too.
Okay, let's see. There you go. So you see those check marks by the actual time session stamps? That means it's been downloaded. So if Boyd would put that in airplane mode, he will only have the option to play the downloaded sessions, right?
So here's deep sleep. Now I'm going to put it in airplane mode, and you'll see what happens to the screen. Yeah. Only the check marks are kind of visible. The other ones are blurred out or grayed out.
Right, because those are not options, right? But he could pick between sleep melodies or summer rain. I could read that. So hopefully that is helpful. I sent her a follow-up email as well, but it can be frustrating when you want to listen to Rescue, because that is the perfect time when you're on an airplane, particularly a long one, and it'll help get you through and minimize any impact from jet lag. And it helps to make your travel experience much more pleasant.
Here's some older questions that were submitted, but they're important. I've heard of tears and emotional responses to Rescue. My wife had a very strong emotional reaction and is resistant to go through that again. Why is this happening? What should I tell her? The answer generally is always power through it. Think of the stress and anxiety built up in us if it's untreated. It's like an iceberg. You're not going to put that in your drink, and you're not going to get the iceberg small enough. You're going to have to chip away at it. So you have to kind of chip by continuing to use Rescue sessions to break down that built up stress and anxiety. And then there was another question said, do you experience a detox with Rescue? People can feel that. The other thing is, it may cause you to need to go to the bathroom because you're releasing fluids and stuff like that. There's a lot of what our body does to protect us. And then when you get a release, it's releasing more than just our, changing our frequencies.
Yep. Okay, we probably have time for maybe one more question. If anyone has another one, you're welcome to either come off mute or please post it in the chat. I think we're caught up on the chat.
I'm gonna share my screen on one more thing too as we're doing this. Not that one. Hang on. Get to. Sorry, I gotta move this. This protocols. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Small. So, the more the better, right? So if you want the best quality sleep, we're saying do Rescue more often. If you start down here, if you want healthy sleep, a couple times, everything that's good for us is a habit. So 3 to 4 times a week of Rescue or PowerNap in the least, and then some, 8-hour or repeated use of 50 minutes if you wake up and have to reuse it. You want better sleep, do more rescue. Again, you're dealing with stress and anxiety better by doing more and longer sessions. And then if you can back down and not need it as long, great. Right. So the more, the better in general. So the more NuCalm you can do once a day, twice a day, 10 times a week, etc. NuCalm being Rescue and PowerNap more than anything, the better your sleep's going to improve, because you're really getting more recovery during the day, and then your body's just going to flow through sleep cycles.
Here's a great question from Timothy. Where would I find the price list? I have a son who's a long haul pilot and 2 other sons who often work night shifts. So it's so interesting because we work with a lot of people who do either night shifts, and we have a trucking company that we're working with for all of their long haul drivers, because not only does their circadian rhythm get really messed up and they get tight, but they can also, it helps them rest and recover, like on those occasions that they actually can in a safe place. Let me see. I'm gonna just post our website in the chat where you can purchase anything, and you can also always reach out to support@NuCalm.com, because we do have like our masterminds are able to give away 5 free Edge annual gifts every year. So if you're looking in terms of economy of scale based on usage, that might be a good way to go. So you can always reach out to us and we can set up a call and go through all that. But let me just post this.
While you're doing that, we'll go into the lightning round, because we're getting some questions here at the end.
Okay.
Sheridan, with question about where are we going with AI? We're not out there public yet about anything with AI. What we spent the last couple months doing is really making the product more accessible, separating this from the subscriptions, etc. We do think there's a potential for AI, but this is engineered music. The AI may be on more of the experience of the user, and how do we kind of advance protocols is one consideration. The price list, this is very simple. You can buy one of the 6 a la carte, and I'll use round numbers. It's $15, $14.99. We then do 3 bundles, right? Peak, which is everything we offer has rescue in it, except if you only a la carte something other than rescue. So Peak is rescue, focus, and ignite. Core is the original 3. It's FlowState, PowerNap, and rescue. And then Sleep Suite is PowerNap, rescue, and deep sleep. And Edge is everything. So the way to think of this, it's either $15 for any single thing, $30 for a 3-pack, any of the Peak, Core, and Sleep Suite, and Edge is $50. If somebody does annual, all our annual plans are basically you're paying that same $15, $30, or $50 for 10 months, saving 2 months because you're prepaying for the access up front. And then Mastermind is $34.95, includes the 5 gift subscriptions plus discs, etc. And we do often provide discs at half off to Masterminds. Speaker recommendation.
I'm getting a link that I'm gonna post. That's what I'm trying to do really quick.
If you like stereo, I will tell you JBL has it's either Flip 5 or Flip 6 and beyond, because I have a Flip 4 too, and they don't do stereo. But a JBL Flip 5 or a Flip 6, you can actually pair them. So you could literally create stereo effect with NuCalm. Is it possible to use rescue and feeling strong anxiety, stress, and not get relief? Again, repeat, rinse and repeat, and power through it and keep doing it. Because you may, if you're really stressed or anxious, you got to chip away at that. It may be built up to be too much.
Okay, I just put the headphone and speaker recommendations in the chat. Joyce, if you are not on your computer, you can just reach out to me. It's amy.song@nucalm.com, and that actually goes for everybody on this call. I'd be happy to just send it directly to you. If you can't, just copy and paste it from the chat. So amy.song@nucalm.com. Okay. I think we are at our time here. Okay. So this was recorded. We'll send this out to everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to those that pre-submitted questions. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. And yeah, go ahead, Boyd.
Two things actually. If you have any topics you'd like us to talk about more, I mean, we can go deeper on the discs, talk about GABA, how GABA works more. We can talk more about sleep and sleep cycles and sleep pressure and how the amygdala releases adenosine, et cetera. We can also, tailor things. We can take one-on-one calls as needed. But the last thing I would ask is, based on your experience, we would love for you to, because this helps us help more people, post a review on either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, wherever you download it, to talk about your experience and give us a rating. And the reason we're asking for that is we know what this does for people. We see wonderful reviews, and I respond to a lot of them now. But the more we can share your experiences with the world, the more people we think we can help.
So we would appreciate it. A rating is great. A written review is even better if you have the time. So we would very much appreciate it.
And
Okay.
thank you all for taking time to sit
Yeah.
down with us today and chat.
That's right. Take care. I'm going to end the meeting now, Boyd.